Wednesday, let's chat. I'm Kannan Chandran, the publisher of StormAsia.com, and this is part of our weekly web chat series where we get into all kinds of discussions and topics. It's been almost a year since we've been locked away in our homes, and I'm sure the idea of travel weighs heavy on a lot of people's minds. They just want to get out there, get onto a plane or onto a boat and seek new lands to get away from the confines of life in their familiar surroundings. One of the key things we want to find out is how have you been feeding your travel fix? Bernard.
We can travel, actually. We can travel within Malaysia. In fact, we've flown to Langkawi twice from Penang.
Okay.
It's a 20-minute flight. And but it's nice because the hotels are very, very cheap. Very nice hotels.
So the advantage of Subhas, you being in Australia as well, is that you can travel the country, you and Bernard, right? At least there are places that you can go to. I suppose in a small place like Singapore is a bit more of a challenge. How important is travel to the psyche of the population?
I think it's a very important aspect. Of course, in Singapore, we all have taken travel for granted. We don't think twice about jumping on a plane and going to Bali or Malaysia or anywhere else, or even further away, to USA or UK. Especially for someone in the airline industry, I used to travel almost every week. So travel itself is not a fear factor. I think people will jump on a plane as soon as they are allowed to. I think the problem is the restrictions that have been imposed by government.
I think in Singapore's context, many people had to put their travel plans on hold this year, but I think many are still dreaming, about traveling in the future. So I think for us, we have been keeping and engaging our customers on the digital platforms. It means on our social media, we have webinars, we have live streams, we even have culinary sessions, to show culinary cuisines in Australia, just to whet the appetite of, and to feed their wanderlust. So I think we even do like questions and poll amongst our customers, like, do they prefer, what kind of future travel do they prefer? Like, is it nature or city, hotel or farm stay, shopping or trekking? So we are actually kind of like looking at creating itineraries for the future, how we can cater.
How do those polls turn out? What are the responses like?
I think we are for sure that travelers are looking for more experiential tourism in the future, and they will actually look at maybe less explored areas, more nature, more activities rather than the city center. As we all know that for now, there are 4 S in Singapore, which is Staycation, Seacation by Genting Dream, Sailcation by Royal Caribbean, and Shopping Till You Drop in Hong Kong soon.
Well, you can shop till you drop in Singapore real soon, actually, with JeweLuxe.
So Nelson, you've taken a different approach to your JeweLuxe was a big event before, right?
Yeah, it was a 13,000
around the world.
13,000 tax event. And as you know, all the shows globally have sort of ceased to exist this year. So there's with the 4 of the Basel World, Hong Kong shows. What we have done, I think, relentlessly with the Singapore government over the last 7 months is to pivot, is to just continue the engagement with our consumers and with the world by pivoting into an island-wide format in line with Rediscover Singapore, which I think Alicia will be very familiar with. So rediscovering places in Singapore, as with an event I've done last week at Siri House, for example, many of the customers have not encountered or known of Siri House until the event. So that's really just part of the whole Rediscover Singapore concept. And we're going to continue to do so from a 10 days fair into a 4 months long event, right? Working with our local retailers, that would be like Goha, Li Hua, to Elliot and Carmen and Raffles Hotels, to the restaurant, right? Benefiting the local ecosystem and the local domestic economy, as we call it. So that has been the format that at least JeweLuxe take up. And I think there's a lot of value there. Singaporeans understanding and discovering Singapore again.
The fact that you had a chance to take a break means you're not in a mad rush to keep meeting deadlines all the time. So have you reevaluated how you are doing it? Nelson, you just explained it in terms of yours, in terms of how you've taken a big event and made the smaller things, but for yourself?
Surprisingly, we're doing actually very well. We're actually got a lot of work. So it's...
So your plans, the business has not been unhinged by COVID. I mean,
actually
they're still carrying on with all, but then yours are fairly long-term
yes,
projects, right?
there are people who had ideas in the pipeline and who, by the time they actually execute and it's built, which will be like 3 years down the road, probably everything will be solved by then. So I don't think it impacts us particularly. In fact, in a way, we actually have seen more business now than before. So it was interesting.
Yeah, well, for us, I think the difficulty is, at the end of the day, what are we? We are a mode of transport. This is not a crisis of the airlines making. This is a crisis which is created by government regulations. So just to give you an idea, countries where there is a domestic market, actually aviation has taken off already. In China, in Japan, in Vietnam, because the governments are prone to allow domestic flights to commence and continue. And in China, for instance, they have got as many people traveling today as they did in 2019. Similarly in Vietnam, in Japan is 70%. So I think people will travel as long as they are not prevented from traveling.
Travel restrictions are seen as the main barrier, standing in the way of a recovery of international tourism. So I think travelers are keen and eager to travel as long as testing regimes are in place to ensure that travelers are in a safe and adhere to safety and hygiene protocols. So I think take the case of the recent launch of the cruise to nowhere out of Singapore. So it takes a whole village to approve this cruise to nowhere, means a cruise into the open seas, whereby they have to adhere to the global hygiene protocols and framework. When you travel, you need to do a pre-COVID test, prior to embarkation or on the cruise or the airline. And then after that, when you reach there, you have to do another test. And when you come back, you do another test. And so there are about 4 tests that you need to do. So there are the cost factors that may be a deterrent factor. The test of a PCR out of Singapore is about $200 per time.
How much is it in other countries?
It's around there, I mean, some countries are a bit lower. Some countries can be about $150, but it's still very high. I mean, if you consider a family of 4, it's a lot of money. So you got to get the test cost down. They must be accessible, must be accurate, and must be rapid.
Yeah.
And all those would go into the ticket price, or is it billed separately?
Well, I mean, different marketing tactics can be deployed because, for example, for the cruise one, they also need to take the test. So some cruise liner actually put it as a package bundle. Some charge a nominal fee of about $60. So it depends on the marketing techniques and tactics.
Yeah, you got to bring the cost of the test down, and then I think the travelers wouldn't mind paying for it. If it's a couple of bucks, why not?
Yeah.
But if it's $100, $200, I think people will be a bit wary.
Yeah, especially if you're already on a low-cost carrier, if and when they fly, that's probably more than the cost of the ticket.
Yeah. Right.
What about the cost of airfares? Do you think they're going to go up?
I think the cost of airfares is really a function of demand and supply. Right now, the airfares are actually very high because both demand and supply are artificially suppressed. For example, in Australia, the government says every airline that comes in, every flight that comes in, can only bring in 30 passengers. So imagine you have a 250-seater aircraft and you can only sell 30 seats. So what would airlines do? They have to cover their direct operating costs. So most likely the fares will be high.
So I have a friend who came in from Tokyo the other day, and he was sharing his experience that he has to pay. Usually an air ticket from Tokyo to Singapore on business class is about 3,000 plus, but he's paying double price now. 6,000.
Okay.
Did he come in via the green lane? Is it now allowed for us to go over as well?
Go over, not yet. Come in, yes.
It's not a
It's
two-way
one way,
relationship.
yeah,
A one-way relationship with Japan now.
One-way relationship at this juncture.
Okay. All right.
One way is a good
I
way
think
of looking at
Singapore is trying very hard to open up to try and also showcase the fact that our numbers are relatively low and the system is being
Yeah,
managed
I think
better
Singapore has to
again.
be held up as a good example, because what they are doing is they are applying risk assessment. So they are opening up for countries where the prevalence of the virus is similar or lower than Singapore. So as the minister said in his statement, I mean, bringing somebody from Hong Kong, the risk is no greater than someone traveling from Jurong to Changi,
Yeah.
because they have the same prevalence of the virus. So I think Singapore has to be commended, for the approach that it's taking. But unfortunately, it is unilateral. So Singaporeans cannot go to a lot of countries. Hong Kong
Not
maybe,
yet.
but not
Not
a
yet.
lot of
But
countries.
slowly we
Yeah.
are seeing that because if the air travel bubble has been established between Singapore and Hong Kong, and if that is the one that can take off and be a case study, then I think the next one will be Australia and then New Zealand.
There are a lot of airlines in the Asia Pacific region. So
How many are there?
Well, in our grouping, we have 15. But if you take all the airlines, everything, there are some close to 80 over airlines in the whole region.
80.
So
Okay.
yeah. So
how many will still be around at the end of all this?
well, well, that's a very difficult question to answer. It's one that we don't want to answer. So I think what we need to focus is how to get through this particular crisis, and then the normal market forces and commercial factors and all that will take effect and decide, who survives, who doesn't survive. But at the moment, I can tell you that most airlines are really facing a very difficult time. All of them are facing an existential threat.
Are businesses going to be more cautious now as they move forward because you don't know what's coming next? So would they start operating in a more defensive position rather than being gung-ho and attacking the business opportunities?
I think so, definitely. I think first and foremost, I mean, going back to one of your earlier questions, is travel going to really spring up, and reach the dizzying heights of what it was in 2019? I don't think so. Because one, it depends on the evolution of the pandemic. There will be a lot of limitations as to where people can travel to and where airlines can fly to. Secondly, I think airlines coming out of this crisis, will probably be reluctant to put so much of capacity into the market immediately, because not knowing what the demand profile is. The industry is, for many years, usually drives, I would say, driving a car by looking at the rear view mirror. So past trends, is an indication of how you should plan for the future. But unfortunately, the past is too good to be true, and the future is too true to be good. So we have to be more cautious.
In the past, with your big events, you were dependent on tourists coming in and attending your events, right?
And we were dependent on the exhibitors as well, actually.
Exhibitors as well.
Yeah.
So now that's been hampered. So do you change your focus and look at more local brands and local exhibitors and a local public customer?
As a fair that traditionally would rely on 80 exhibitors to what we have this year, 30 exhibitors, it's a huge differentiation, right? No usual business will be able to withstand that drop in income. What we have done is restructure the whole firm, and we were actually changing our plans almost on a weekly basis, and that has become the new norm, where change is the only constant for us. So that means restructuring how the website would work to display a island-wide format restructuring the way we talk to our exhibitors, showing them empathy, because in Italy they're not doing well. People are dying, people are suffering.
How many years can you carry on doing this if?
Yes, so we're actually taking this as a prototype. And so if this island-wide format will indeed work, it could be permanent.
You look at people losing jobs, a lot of uncertainty. Wouldn't that have an impact on how people would also go into this sort of consumption patterns for products like yours, luxury, not necessarily a must-have, but a nice-to-have?
Indeed. Well, what we have seen is the trend where people would spend their travel money now on luxury. As long as they're not impacted, of course, by the pandemic. There's a lot of money and pent-up frustration not being able to experience something, right? Experience travel. So they would then divert that fund directly to luxury.
IATA, this International Air Transport Association predicts that the travel will not return to 2019 levels, international travel, until 2024. So that is because of this. The prevalence is varies from region to region. But within the Asia Pacific region, I think there are a lot of places where people can travel to.